A black father loses his 10-year-old daughter in mysterious circumstances. Not trusting the official version, he makes the desperate decision to install a hidden camera in his safe. But what he sees on the tape will change his life, and change it forever. Subscribe to the channel, and write in the comments where you are watching us from. The sun was high in the sky, projecting long shadows on the peaceful street of Banlieue, where William Johnson lived with his 10-year-old daughter, Princess. The neighborhood was ordinary, composed of modest houses with white closets and well-kept pillows. It was the kind of place where people smiled politely, but never went further. William often thought of it by watching his daughter play outside. She was everything to him, her bright light. The one who had helped him keep his feet on the ground after the departure of his mother years earlier. That morning looked like all the others. The princess was sitting at the kitchen table, drawing with her colored pencils, while William was cooking eggs and sausages. She was drawing an image of two, a father and his daughter, hands in hand under a tree. "Make sure you draw my muscles well," said William, flinching his arm, while placing his plate on the table. Princess laughed and raised the drawing half-finished. "You are the strongest father in the world," she said with a big smile. William leaned over to kiss the top of his head. "Never forget that," he replied. It was the last time he heard her laugh. In the afternoon, the park was crowded with children. Princess insisted on going there, and William had accepted with a heart. He planned to finish some papers for the car workshop where he worked, but he was distracted, looking at the clock every few minutes. When the phone rang, he knew, even before he hung up. The voice at the end of the line belonged to a policeman. "Sir, we need you to come to the Memorial Hospital immediately. It's about your daughter." William barely remembered the journey to the hospital. The waiting room felt the antiseptic and desolation. When the doctor finally appeared, his words pierced him like knives. "We tried everything, but the princess did not survive. The official report indicated that she had fallen off the trampoline and had hit her head. A tragic accident," he said. William barely listened to the explanations. His world had collapsed in an instant, leaving a huge gap. The funerals were organized quickly, too quickly for William to really understand what had happened. Friends and neighbors presented their condolences, but their words sounded hollow. The little princess's coffin, white with golden ornaments, seemed strangely out of place among the rows of gray tombstones of the cemetery. It was only at the night of the day William began to notice things that seemed abnormal to him. The princess' body was resting in the coffin, her face unusually pale but peaceful, as if she were simply sleeping. Yet something was bothering him. There were eczema on his arms and legs, marks that had not been mentioned in the autopsy report. William remembered the hesitations of the ambulance drivers when he asked questions, of their fleeing gazes, as if they were afraid to meet their own. At first, they thought it was the grief that was playing tricks on them, but their doubts persisted. The funeral workers did not care. William had heard them joking in the corridor, speaking in a low voice to do quickly and not waste time with people like them. These words had hurt people like them. The black families did not question. They did not protest. Later, when they looked one last time at the princess's coffin, they noticed something else. Her hands, so small and delicate, had dirt under their nails. A sudden panic took hold of them. They turned to Clara, her young sister from Atlanta, for the funerals. "She did not have this dirt before," murmured he, trembling. "Why would there be dirt under his nails?" Clara looked worried at the funeral workers, then turned to William. "You are exhausted," she said. "You've been through too much. Let's try again. Let's try to let her go." But William couldn't let go. That night, he stayed awake and passing each detail back into his mind. The echoes, the earth, the laughter of the employees. Something was wrong, and he couldn't ignore it. At dawn, he had made his decision. He went into an electronics store and bought a small hidden camera. The seller raised eyebrows, but didn't ask any questions. Back home, William carefully disassembled the fold of the coffin, hiding the camera and positioning it to capture the inside. He felt guilty, as if he was violating something sacred, but he could not get rid of the idea that the death of Princess was not the accident that was expected. When Clara passed later, William told her what he had done. "You are serious?" she exclaimed, the voice rising in tone. "You put a camera in his coffin?" "William, you're losing your footing." "What if I wasn't?" he replied. "What if something had happened and no one had bothered to look closer? Because we're black. What if he'd just ignored it?" Clara's expression softened, but her gaze remained wary. "And if you're wrong, then what?" "Then I'll have to live with it," William replied. "I knew I hadn't abandoned my daughter." That night, William sat down in front of his computer, watching the live broadcast of the camera. The screen only showed the darkness, the closed inside of the coffin. The hours passed without anything happening. He said he was paranoid, that he should simply turn off the camera and mourn. But at midnight, he noticed something strange, the slightest movement so subtle that he first thought of a technical problem. He looked at the screen, his heart beating. There, once again, a shadow crossed the frame, followed by a deafening noise, like something scratching the wood. William's belly was nodding, but he couldn't turn his gaze. William stayed frozen in front of the screen, his eyes shriveled over the granular images. He tried to convince himself that it was just a simple dysfunction, connection problems, insufficient lighting, or reflections. But the persistent, weak but distinct noise made him shiver. He swung his fingers trembling, slipping on the parlor. He looked again, so close to the screen that his breath was. The camera in the princess coffin had caught something. His heart was beating at full speed as he continued to watch. The movement reappeared discreet, like the frothing of a cloth. And then the sound of scratching came back, sporadic, but very real. The rational part of his mind begged him to stop, whispering excuses, defective equipment, interferences coming from the cemetery, or maybe even an animal. But none of this made sense. It was happening inside the coffin, in the princess coffin. William let himself fall on his chair, rubbing his temples, as the memories of the burial were resurfacing. The precipitated preparation of the body, the earth under his nails, the inexplicable ecchymoses. The small details that he had tried to ignore formed now a cloud of doubts that he could not unravel. Incapable of resisting, William relaunched the video, this time with headphones, increasing the volume to the maximum to capture each sound. It was then that he heard voices. They were weak, far away at the beginning, as if they were coming from another room. The recording captured murmurs followed by short bursts of laughter. William paused the video and stretched out his ear. "Quick, they won't even notice." His stomach knotted. He rewound and listened again, this time concentrating on the background noises. The voices became clearer as he adjusted the volume. "Don't complicate things, just do it. What's the point? They'll never check." These voices belonged to calm, almost indifferent men, and their tone left no doubt. He spoke of a princess. William suddenly got up from his chair, making the 100 steps in the room, as panic rose in him. He pressed his palms against his forehead, trying to make sense of what he had just heard. It couldn't be real. Perhaps he had misinterpreted it. But the more he thought about it, the clearer it became. Someone had manipulated the princess's body. He turned to the computer, trembling hands, and copied the file on 3 distinct USB keys, then transferred it to the cloud and sent it by email. He was determined not to lose this evidence. His first reflex was to call the police. But he hesitated. What would he tell them? That he had installed a hidden camera in his daughter's safe, because he did not trust the system? That the images showed shadows and murmurs? He would take it for a father in debt, unable to accept reality. No, he needed more evidence. The next morning, William returned to the funeral home. The director, a white man older, with a constantly frowning look, received him in his office, slightly lit. "Mr. Johnson," he said, crossing his hands on his desk, "I'm sorry for your loss. What can I do for you today?" William tried to keep his voice calm. "I need to ask questions about some irregularities concerning my daughter's body." The director's expression did not change. Irregularities? There were ecchymoses that were not mentioned in the report, William replied, and dirt under his nails. "Can you explain that?" The director leaned against the chair. "The bodies underwent natural changes during the preparation. The eczema is frequent, and sometimes residues remain stuck under the nails. I assure you that this is nothing unusual." William grasped his fists. "It's not a satisfying answer." The director's gaze hardened. "I understand your pain, Mr. Johnson, but I ask you to respect our staff and the difficult work they do. If you wish to file an official complaint, William did not let him finish. He left the room in a rage, boiling with anger. The attitude of the director, who minimized his concerns, only strengthened his suspicions. Later in the day, William called Clara and asked her to come. She arrived in less than an hour, her face marked by worry. "You're scaring me, William," she said, sitting on the couch. He showed her the video. When it was over, Clara's hands were shaking. "Oh, that's insane," she said. "What are we supposed to do with this?" "We're going to see the police," William replied. "We'll show them the video and demand that they reopen the investigation." Clara hesitated. "And if they don't believe us? So we'll keep going until someone listens to us." That evening, they went to the police station. William brought one of the USB keys and explained the situation to the host. He brushed his eyebrows but agreed to look. 30 minutes later, the detective in charge of the case appeared. His expression was impenetrable when he stretched the USB key to William. "The audio is blurry, and the shadows could be due to a changing lighting or interference from the camera. I am sorry, but there is nothing here that justifies the reopening of the investigation." William felt the ground wavering under his feet. "You didn't even listen to the recording," he protested. "We listened enough," said the detective. "I suggest you concentrate on your grief instead of running after conspiracy theories." William left the police station and went crazy, his anger boiling right under the surface. Clara tried to comfort him, but he was barely listening. The police would not help them. If they wanted answers, they should find them themselves. That night, William sat in the dark, staring at the screen as the images were spinning in a loop. The voices were resonating in his head. They would not even notice. He could not help but replay his words over and over, until he heard everything he heard. He thought of the princess' smile, his laughter, and the promise he had made to protect her. He knew it was only the beginning. William did not sleep that night. The faint glow of the screen illuminated his face, while the recording went on for the 5th, then the 6th time. He stretched his ear to hear the voice of the princess.